Hello everyone. So in today's Alteryx tutorial, we are going to learn basic data cleansing in Alteryx. And by basic data cleansing, what I mean is that doing text to column, learning how to work with the select function and renaming of the columns, as well as replacing zeros with nulls, removing leading and trailing white spaces, removing punctuations, and modifying the case of the text in a table. So let's get started. For this, what I've taken is that I've taken a basic table, and this table has 4 columns: ID number, region, city and state, and revenue. All the ID numbers should end in a digit. However, they're also ending with a lot of other characters which aren't digit. And this is effectively the data cleaning that we have to do for this particular column. Then the data cleaning to be done in the next column is, so in west, you can see that there is a leading space. In south, also you can see that there's a leading space. Then in the next column, which is city and state, there are 2 things which have to be done. First is that we have to separate the city and the state in 2 different columns. And then since the state is an abbreviation like NYCA, we need NY and CA to be in caps. And for the last column, revenue, what we need is that wherever there is a blank, which means that there is no revenue, we want a 0 to be added there. So this is our input, and this is how our output should look like, wherein we have ID number, region, then we have the city column, then we have the state column, and then we have the revenue column. I'm going to start all of this in a new workflow. And the first step in any Alteryx workflow is to get the input data. Now, to get this input data, you can connect with any of your files. Directly drag and drop your file, or you can select any of the files from any of your local drives, and you can add it as the input file. These are all the file types which are supported by Alteryx. Another way that you can do is that if you want to put a text input, then you can also put a text input. And in this workflow, how I'm going to start is that I'm going to put a text input. So the difference between a text input and this file is that in the input text, the data itself, which has to be cleaned, remains in the workflow, and there is no live connection between the workflow and the input source. Since it's a very small data set, I'm going to input the text. So one thing you should note that when you're doing a text input, you should start from the first row and not from the second row, so that when you already have the headers. Otherwise, if you start from here, then what would happen is that it would put this as field 1, field 2, and your headers won't be taken as headers. They would be taken as normal text entry, like row record numbers, rather than the headers. Cool. So on the first, the first thing that we're going to do is that we're going to start with city and state. And the reason is that we need to first get all the columns right. So as I mentioned earlier, that what we need is that in our finals, we need a city and we need a column state as 2 different columns. So first of all, what we're going to do is that we're going to get all our columns right, and then we're going to start with data cleaning. To get all the columns, we are going to do text to column. It is very similar to what we do in Excel. And the column to split, here we are going to select city and state. The delimiter is 1. The number of columns means that the number of columns that needs to be created. We just need 2 columns, which is city and state. The output root name, the output root name effectively means that when the 2 columns are created, what should it be called? So it should be called city and state 1, city and state 2. So we can just do a Control R, run, and we can show you how it's there. And right now, so over here, this one shows the input, and in the quick quick view field, you can see this one shows the output. So in the output, what I can see is that we have city state 1, which carries the name of all the city, and we have city and state 2, which carries the name of all the states. Now we are going to take a select field. And why we are going to take a select field? Because we need to rename the column headers. So we need this only to have the name city and this to have the name state. So we're just going to take this and we're going to select all of these. And on the first city and state 1, we are going to write it as city, and city and state 2, we're going to mention it as state. And we're going to uncheck city and state because we just need these columns. And I'm going to do a Control R, and I'm going to quickly show you what is there. So we have a column city and state. Now, one thing that is important is the arrangement of the column. Now, if we want the revenue column to come at the last, all we need to do is that shift it to the end here. And this will be done. So again, you have city, state, and revenue. Okay, so now we have all our columns in place. Now the last thing that we have to do is that we have to start cleaning each and every column. For doing this, we are going to take the data cleansing tool and add it over here. Now, the first thing that we have to do is that we need to remove anything and everything which is not a number in the ID number column, and these are effectively something called the punctuations. So we are going to go to the data cleansing this, and we're going to select punctuations. Okay, so this would, what would it do is that it would remove all the unnecessary characters which are here. The next column, that is region, what we need to do is that we need to get rid of leading and trailing spaces. Now, the reason is that I have selected here all the fields. So the first thing that you have to see is that where is it applying. So punctuations would be removed in all the columns. However, if I see, and if there are no punctuations in the other columns, so even if this data cleansing is applying on all the columns, it's not causing any trouble to me. So that is why I've selected all the fields so that I can clean all the fields in one go. However, if you want that one aspect of data cleaning is happening only on one column and the other aspect of data cleaning is happening only on another column, then you will have to add like multiple data cleaning tools to ensure and select the relevant field. For me, I do not have an issue with removing punctuations from all the columns because this is consistent. The next is leading and trailing spaces. Again, I do not have an issue with removing leading and trailing spaces in all the columns. So I'm going to select all the columns, which is the case. And I'm going to say that remove unwanted characters, leading and trailing white spaces. You're supposed to remove them for all the columns. The next thing that we have is that we have New York City. So here we don't have to make any changes. This is the perfect column. The next column that we have is that we have to make this as capital. So what we can do is that we can go to modify case and we'll do uppercase. Now please note that this is going to make all of state column as uppercase. However, if you do not want all of the columns to be made as uppercase and you want only the state column to be made as uppercase, what you're going to do is you're going to drag one more data cleansing tool over here. You're going to uncheck all, select only state, and then remove all these things and just select modify case, make it uppercase. And here you're going to uncheck modify case, uppercase here. So this would ensure that only, so we have added a data cleansing tool only for state, so as to ensure that only state is getting modified to uppercase. If you want to modify all the columns to uppercase, you can just simply click over here as modify to uppercase, and what would happen is that all the columns and all the text in each and every column will move to uppercase. Now, the last cleansing that we have to do is in the revenue column, wherein we want that wherever there is a blank, 0 gets involved into it. Now I can apply this change to all the columns. The reason being that there is no other column which has blank. So I can just go and select that instead of replace nulls, we are going to replace them with 0 for numeric fields, right? And there are no strings which are blank. So there is nothing that we have to replace with blanks for string fields. That also you can do. However, if there are 2 numeric fields and you want only for one column which has numeric fields to replace with 0, then you'll have to put 2 data cleansing tools. And now I guess we are all done. All we need to do is Control R and see it's done.